Hey, Will, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Mary?
Good, thanks.
Good. I need to make you co-host.
Yeah, me and Ryan and Greta would be great if that's possible.
Yes. Greta and Ryan are already co-hosts,
Oh,
and you should be
perfect.
too.
Great. Yes, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Mary, quick question for you. Did you want me to do the introductions, or is that something that the three of you were hoping to do?
I think we can introduce ourselves as we go. We can just jump right in. I think Ryan will kick it off with an introduction to me and then Greta. So I think we'll
Okay,
introduce ourselves as we go.
Yeah,
great.
yes. I concur.
Then let's do that. I will linger, and if I can help in any way, you just let me know.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, so it's 3 o'clock. I think folks are trickling in a little bit. Do we want to give it another minute or so before we kick it off?
I think we can go for it.
Whoop. All right, sounds good. Okay, I just wanted to welcome everyone to the inaugural meeting of the PCC Sinopia Cataloging Affinity Group. My name is Timothy Ryan Mendenhall. Most people call me Ryan, but Timothy is also fine. And I will be the facilitator for the group. We are seeking a co-facilitator. So if you're interested, you could reach out to me or Mary Seam, you know, chat us or just get in touch with us. Our contact info is available on the wiki site for the group. At any rate, and I should also note that Greta de Groot will also serve as the trainer for these sessions of the Affinity Group. And I'll hand it over to Mary to get the group started, or to get the presentation for today started.
Sure, let me just share my screen and we'll get up and running. You guys are in the way of my little present button. Cool. So welcome everybody to the Affinity Group. I assume, there we go. Josh should be up. This is the inaugural meeting. It's super exciting. We're very excited to have you all here. The turnout is fantastic. So here's the plan for today. Introduce, which Ryan's already taken care of. I'm going to quickly sort of run through some of the highlights of the training modules that the PCC has created. Greta is then going to demonstrate a walkthrough of using the profiles. Then we'll give some examples and give you all time to practice, or you can work with your own material if you have some, but we have a couple of samples of monographs and serials. And we'll welcome questions during that time as you're working. And then at the end, we'll sort of regroup and see what some of the larger questions were, if you guys have any takeaways. So the group, this is all of sort of our charge and context. All of this, again, I put the link in the chat. I can add more. I can put it again as more people come in, but this is our charge and it's available on our wiki space, which is sort of the hub for everything. It will have the meeting notes, all of the documentation, as well as our charge and contact information and stuff like that. So the plan is that this is a group for PCC catalogers using the PCC Sinopia templates and the PCC cataloging standards to use Synopia and learning how to use Synopia. So the training has been developed by the PCC, the different group, and that's been made available to you. And that's sort of a starting point, and this will hopefully be a bit more granular and get you into the nitty-gritty of actually creating some descriptions in Synopia. So here are the resources. Again, we'll put links because I know you can't click through this, but the wiki page is a great space. The Google group also is linked in the wiki space, but gives you all of the, where you'll get all of the mailings and sort of information for future meetings. And then we have a shared folder, which will have this meeting and slides, like this set of slides, and meeting notes and all of that sort of stuff. So documentation is plentiful. So again, I'm just going to sort of breeze through some of an overview of some of the elements of the training modules, because I think this is sort of like what you really need to get up and started. The modules are linked in our wiki space, but this is also the website, and I'll put that link in the chat in a second. So first thing you need to do is create an account. If you haven't made one already today and you'd like to participate in the working hour, then I strongly suggest you go ahead and do that now. So it gives you time to get all set up. So we will be working in stage.synopia.io. Synopia is in multiple iterations as it develops, and stage is sort of the training wheel area of Synopia, if you will. And that's where we'll be working from. So when you log on, you can, you go to stage.synopia.io and you'll see the button to request an account. You'll create a username and password. You'll be sent a confirmation email, and then you're good to go. And then once you log in, you'll see this is what your homepage should look like. And the only place that you really need to go to in order to access the profiles is this link data editor section that's circled there. And then when you want to actually start using one of the templates, you go to the resource templates tab and you search for PCC, and all of the PCC profiles and templates will appear. And depending on which one you're working on, you can select. In this case, the one that's highlighted is the monograph work. Greta will go into this in a little bit more detail. And then as well, if you have questions during the working hour, I think that's a great opportunity for people to ask questions as well. So see if any of your questions are answered first, and then we're more than happy to answer them as they come up. And so once you have that profile open, you'll put in all of your information, and then you get to this stage, which is reviewing your record before you save it. So you can see that little eye icon allows you to export or view your metadata in a variety of formats. And then when you want to save, you click save. As it says, saving does not happen automatically. You need to do it yourself. When you save, it generates, I'll skip ahead a second. It generates a URI here. The URI does not change for the profile for your work, even when you make edits. So I recommend, and it was my practice with Synopia, to save early and often. So you can always re-enter the URI and go back to your work, but it would really stink if you did a bunch of work and something happened to your computer or you close the tab or whatever and poof, it's gone. So saving, I highly recommend. When you do save, for this group, you'll see there's the little PCC group. When you save, you're prompted, which group do you want to save to? You choose this PCC one. It is a sandbox. This information does not live forever and ever, but these different groups are, some of these institutions that are listed do tightly control their metadata that's created. So please PCC group only if you choose to save your work. And like I said, once it's saved, it generates a URI. It's a great idea to keep the URIs of the work that you do on hand in case it's easy. It's an easy way to recall the work that you've done. So when you do want to recall the work that you've done, you go to that linked data editor tab, and you'll see next to the resource template one we were talking about before, you'll see search. And in the search tab, you can do a query and you'd search against all of Synopia, and you can search for the title of the item you were working on or an author or any sort of keyword. You can also search by the URI that you'd created. And this is a super effective way of pulling up what you had been working on before. So I feel like that is like the quickest and the briefest of overviews. All of this information comes from those training modules, but this is really like just to get you up and running, how to open Synopia, find the profile you need, and then save the work you've made when you're done. And so with that, I can turn it over to Greta. Is there anything you need me to leave open, or are you going to share your own screen?
Unmute. I will share my screen.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Stop.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I am going to do a walkthrough of a single monograph, one from my private collection since I'm still working from home. Let me go ahead and get started here. I will share my screen, and is that shared yet? Share, click that. Okay, everybody see it? Okay, we're good. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do is to search and make sure that this item is not here. So I'll search what's in Synopia, and I get no results. So I'm going to go over and start with my resource templates. This is handy here where you have most recently used templates. Since I've been recently using them, I've got them lined up here. Personally, I like to start with the instance. It's sort of the way I've always done things. But you can start with work, or you can start sort of anywhere you want. But I'm going to start with instance because I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and click that, and that opened up the BF instance template. Can everybody hear me all right? Am I all good? This is all working so far?
Yeah, you're great.
Okay, great. Okay. So you see the title information is broken into a bunch of pieces here. And I'm going to do add main title. And I'm pasting that in. I'm going to hit enter. And you'll see that shows up here in blue with a little X here, so I can edit it or delete it. I can also change the language if the language of the title was some other language. So that's what would be in mark my subfield A of the title. Go there. I'm going to put in the subtitle now. And I go? Here we go. Subtitle. Now notice hit enter there. Notice there's also a note here. The notes that were in our various fields, but mostly the 5XX fields, open up and now and associated with the particular data elements for that they relate to. So if you have like a title from caption or title from PDF title page or something, personally, I've been putting those notes there. I'm assuming that that will be practice to do that. So I'm going to run down now to, uh-oh, am I frozen or something? I'm starting to get unstable connection messages. So I hope this is going through okay. I'm going to go down to the statement of responsibility and put this in. This is an area where it's different from MARC, because if I put this in like this, you notice I have two statements of responsibility. I've got this one with the authors and also a forward. And this is the way we do it in MARC, and you can do it in Synopia this way. However, you also could choose to do it as two statements of responsibility. You could do that one, and you could do this one. This is something that we're going to need a best practice for, because either of these is technically possible. And so we're not, it hasn't been decided really what the preferred method is. So at least not as far as I know. I'm going to go down. I don't have an addition statement, I believe. So I'm going to go down to the provider statements. The provider statements are broken up into a transcribed provider statement, which is basically what you were putting in the 264. And also individual activities with controlled fields. So this is a little bit different, but actually not that different, because in the 008s, we had sort of controlled fields for the place, but just down to the country level, and the date. So the concept's not really that different. I'm going to put in the transcribed statement there. And notice there's still language there. If you had multiple ones, again, there's space for that. Now let's get the place here. Now these are lookups. So that was what, Jefferson, North Carolina. I'm just going to paste it that way. And a caveat with this is that it's best to search in the format that the authorized form is in, because this can be a little tricky with the searching. It sometimes will pick up other things and not give you the base heading first. So we're lucky here. We got Jefferson, North Carolina, in English. The name of the publisher was that McFarland. Use that again. McFarland and Company. So it's one of those things where it helps to already know the heading before putting it in. McFarland and Company. I'm going to click that one. Notice when it connects up with the authorized heading, it puts in a little world here, which is blue, and the garbage can in case you want to delete it. But if you click that, you go out to the id.loc.gov site. So just so you are aware of that. That's what this one's connecting up to. Date. You notice you have distributor, manufacturer, all these other ones, but I'm still working on the publisher. Date. Personally, I think that this is, the date is, what was it? It was 2018, I think. However, what happens if you've got a date that's questionable or a range, or you have a fuller date, like you have the month and year or something like that? I think this is another best practice. I'm not sure what you do in this field, since this is kind of a more controlled type field. Do you just put in the year like we've been doing with the 008? I'm doing that, but again, we need a best practice on that. So I'm going to go on to, I believe we don't have copyright date on this one. No, we do have a copyright date on this one. Notice I clicked that little, this little symbol over here. This brings up a bunch of charts, and so I need to find the copyright symbol. I'm assuming that even though this is a copyright thing, that we actually do put in the copyright symbol, but again, this could be a best practice. I have not heard this issue discussed, but here's the copyright. Put that in and type 2018. I don't have a series, but notice there is a series thing. And this one is not a lookup. Remember, we're in the instance still. Identifiers, you can put in an LCCN, you can put in an ISBN, and you can put in qualifiers. I'm gonna pop in an ISBN here. Let's see. And there are qualifiers. So, oops, excuse me. This tends to bounce around a bit. I'm not quite sure why. I can add a qualifier. And in the MARC record for this, the qualifier did not have a parentheses, but sometimes in the MARC records they do. And again, I'm not sure whether or not we would enter the parentheses. So, but there's a space there for qualifiers. Other identifiers, you can put your OCLC number in here too. Personally, I always do. I think that's a nice, handy thing to have. There are notes about the instance. And again, you have to decide which notes are going to be about the instance and which ones are going to be about the work. So, but there's a place for notes. Extent, let me add extent. Oops. Which is here. So I have this record, you don't want to watch the type. Dimensions. But notice, now we've passed that kind of physical description part, but there's no illustrations. It's because the illustrations and whether or not there's color is in the work record and not in the instance record. So now we come to what would be the 3x fields, and these are already pre-populated in here. So if you're doing something, if you're doing, say, an ebook or something, this volume here, you'd want to click X to get rid of that, and you would get a drop-down menu of these things, and you would click online resource. Somewhere in here, there it is. But that's where you would change that out, because the template is set up for physical volume, but you can change that. I don't have a URL. You can put a URL in. That was what you were doing. And now we get into some other related manifestations. Like you have the print version of something, and how exactly our best practice is going to be on this, I'm not exactly sure. You can put in notes. You could put in field like the 776, or you could look it up in Synopia if your other one is in Synopia already. This will be interesting to see how this part develops. Now, notice we have instance of, has item, administrative metadata. Those are the other URIs of the other parts that are going to go into this record. So we need to fill those in later. And the subclass of instance down here, you notice this is print. So if you have something other than print, you'll need to swap that out. And it's got the path there so you can find what ontology this is, which took me a while to figure out. So I'm going to save this record. So I'm going to click save and save it to PCC. And save. And It goes to the URI, and I can copy this URI. So I've copied that to my clipboard. Personally, I actually save these URIs as I go along too. I don't want to lose track of where something is or what something's attached to. So I personally go ahead and save that. But now that I've got it in my clipboard, what I'm going to do now is go back to the templates, and I'm going to start my work. So look for my work record first. The work template, want to get instance item. Here we go. And this is sometimes a little slow about bringing up things, and then you find you've created multiple ones. But now I'm in the work record, and I'm going to go down to, where are we? Has bibframe instance. So this will be the instance that's associated with this work. And I'm going to put it in my instance record. Click look up. So it's going to look it up in Synopia. And it finds it. And I click that. And see, I've got my little blue world. So it's attached to something. And so now I can get started with the rest of this record. We have the contributors. We have the primary contributor. This one says one only, which is useful to know because when I was in the first templates I was working in, it wasn't clear whether or not you could have more than one primary. So somebody's made a decision here. So that is very handy. And I'm going to plop in my primary contributor, add name of person. And I'm going to look up and see if this attaches, because the other day it actually did not find the right person. And it looks to me like it's continuing not to find the right person. This is odd because this person is in fact in id.loc.gov. And so you go back and I believe find the right tab. So now I put this up here, and this is hard to do on sharing the screen. So I will have to look this up. Sorry about that. Well, anyway, I could look it up there. I did have it marked, but I can't seem to find it at the moment. But you can, in fact, actually look up the URI, the actual URI, and put that URI in. Since I can't do that right now, I'm just going to click that. And that I clicked add literal, and so it added a literal for that name. I am going to add the relationship designator author. And we have one more, I'm going to add contribution. So I have contributor here. I've only got one other person, which is good. But if I had multiple people, I would have to use add another to add multiple contributions, because the relationship designator is going to be associated with the individual contributor. So each of these need to be on their own node. So you have to make sure that the right ones are attached to the right name, the right roles are attached to the right name. So this person, and I'll bet that this doesn't look up either. Let's see. Yeah, this is not going to look up either. So I'm going to add literal, add relationship, author, and I'm going to move on to title. We have title label and preferred title for work. And at this point, I'm not exactly clear what we are. I assume that most of the time these are going to be the same. And I'm not sure what the difference is going to be when there is a difference. So we need to talk about this and have some best practices for this. And right now, I'm just going to put the same thing in both because I don't have an initial article. I'm assuming that perhaps an initial article will go with one of the other of those. I'm not sure which. And this is bouncing around again, sorry. Title label. Okay. And go through form of work. This is a genre, and I'm not sure what our best practice is going to be here with regular things that are not the genres we usually broke out. Like this would be an informational work. Let's see. It all works. I don't know if we're going to do this or not. Some of my colleagues are doing this. Some of my colleagues are not doing this. I'm usually doing this because I usually do films basically. To see this is illustrated, where you can come out with the right one. Okay, well, I'm not going to do that right now then because I'm not going to bother looking that up. But I customarily do it because I usually catalog films. Skip to the next data element. If I get past all of these, let me. Get rid of that. Date of work, place of origin of work. Neither of those we customarily provide, and so it will be interesting to see how we deal with that. Some of that may take research, like what country was this actually conceived in? I don't know. Actually, I do, but series I have there. Notice this series is a lookup. I'm thinking this is analogous to the 830 field, but it looks up in Synopia, although it's also possible to add an R as a URI, but it sort of doesn't really link to link data. So it will be, again, best practices for that. Geographical coverage, if this is various coverage of content, intended audience, notes about the work. This is where you'd have other kinds of notes. I mentioned the notes of the instance. Now this would be the notes of the work. Contents note, summary, subject. I'm going to jump to subject because, again, you can have literals and you can have actual links here. So I'm going to put in one subject here and look it up and see what happens. Notice that this string actually does have a URI. So I can click that and I've got my string linked to that. I'll try another subject and click that. And notice in this case, it didn't locate the same string. So this string I'm going to add as a literal. Classification numbers, there are classes you can add your LC classification. We are assuming, at least those of us at Stanford, I assume others, are assuming that the classification number is basically the A subfield of the 050 and that the item number is the B subfield. If I'm wrong, somebody let me know, because that has been my assumption. You can put your DUI in there, notice. So that's most of it. Content type is text, because this is the monograph template, so that was hardwired in. Language, I can choose the language. It's got lots of them there. I choose English. Script, we usually don't specify, but I'm told Latin is the correct one, not Roman. So illustrative content, this has illustrations, and these illustrations are black and white. So as I said, this is in the work record. I'm going to get my screen the right size again here. Supplementary content. I've been putting bibliographical references and index there. I think we've not usually specified where a lot of this information that we've been normally just putting in 500 fields, where a lot of this can go. Related works. Okay, these are things that we can discuss at length at some point. Related expression of how far down the RDA rabbit hole with all the Ferber levels that we're going to go, I'm not sure, since you don't actually have to do that in BibFrame. So more subject for discussion. Now notice I put in the instance already, and I still have places for administrative metadata, and the type of work is a text. we'll get to the administrative metadata in a minute, but I can save this record to PCC and save, and I get my URI. Copying that URI, and I'm going to go back to the instance record. And instance, and scroll down to where instance of. So pasting that in there, looking it up as soon as I get it up, and there we go. So now we've got the work and the instance attached to each other. However, we are not done because we have administrative metadata still to do. So I'm going to do these pretty quickly. PCC Administrative Metadata, and pull up the administrative metadata template. And it's going to be local practices, I assume, to what to fill out in a lot of these things, but I'm just going to fill this out minimally. Date cataloged, another best practice. I have been, oops, get my data up here. I have been putting it in this format because it seemed sensible to me, but I don't know what we really are going to end up doing. But it seemed to me that we wanted an exact date here. I don't have a change date yet. Oh, URI for your institution. This is, and if I can get to, I didn't realize my tabs are like under the controls for. This is a little bit frustrating. My tabs are under the control for the Zoom, so I can't actually get to my tabs, which is why I couldn't look up that other name. But this one is on the id.loc.gov site for cultural heritage organizations. And if I can actually click that and look up Stanford quickly, I can get my the URI for Stanford University. So get that, put that in this record for your institution. A lot of this stuff is filled out already, RDA, et cetera. There's an encoding level. I'm gonna say this is full. And I'm gonna ignore the rest of the stuff and save this record to PCC again. And copy the URI, and I'm going to attach this to the instance. So I'm going to go over to the instance, where it flips around some more, and find administrative metadata. It's in, look up, click, and I'm attached to that. So, great. Okay, now I'm going back over to my administrative metadata, because I need one for the work record. I need a separate one for the work record. You don't want to attach it to the same one because you could alter one or the other and it wouldn't be applicable to both. So, suppose I went in tomorrow and changed my administrative metadata, or I changed my work record and noted the change date, and that wouldn't apply to the instance if I hadn't changed that. So what I'm going to do in this case, since it's going to be identical at this point, is I'm just going to copy it. And it told me it was copying that, and now I'm going to save it. This time it handily knows I'm going to save to PCC for some reason, so I'm copying that, and I'm going back to the work and attaching this looking it up and attaching that. So I'm good with all of those. One more thing to do. I need an item record. So I'm going back to my resource templates, and somewhere here, there should be an item record. here we are, item monograph. And this is held by, and I have to go back to my Stanford again, held by this. I'm going to ignore everything else at this point. But I need to go back to my instance. Copy the URI and go back to the item. And this is the instance of this thing. There we go. Okay. And now I'll save this record. Now it doesn't know I'm a PCC anymore. It knows why. Try again. PCC. Save. Copy the URI. Go back to the instance. And locate the slot here for item. Where is it? As item. There we go. Look up. Click. And save that. And we're done. We had five templates here, or three different templates with, four different templates with 2 administrative metadatas for your one monograph. So any questions? I hope you all can still hear me.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, feel free to just shout them out or put them in the chat. I'll share again the meeting notes, which have at the top not only the slides, but also the examples that you can work from if you don't have your own object or book in hand. So at the very top, there's a link to a couple of examples. If you'd like to give it a shout, you're more than welcome to try. Obviously, we're not imposing anything. So if you just want to try an instance or a work or something like that, and then I think for maybe the next 30 to 40 minutes, we'll go through and give you guys some time to give it a try. And if there's any questions, we can always share our screen and walk through some portion of it and stuff like that. But if you also have any questions generally, now's at it. We're happy to, any questions about anything related to Synopia and PCC and these profiles.
Okay, Beth has a question in chat. Does this group have a regular meeting time scheduled? And the answer is no. We are still figuring that out. We're not sure when our next meeting time was going to be, but maybe we could have a discussion at the end about that.
Yeah, I had some questions just to pose to people for sort of what they thought of this whole thing. And part of that was to see what we wanted to talk about in future meetings and also when or how often.
I wanted to thank Greta for that thorough walkthrough, and there was one thing I just wanted to note, since there's probably a lot of Synopia newbies, about the interface, and it's in the resource templates, a lot of the required elements have asterisks by them, so that can be helpful if you're trying to save data and you're not sure why it's not saving or something. So make sure you have all of those required elements filled out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's in the module 4 of the PCC training, there is an explanation of all of the little symbols that are next to each of those fields. So things like the info, which gives you further information about what you should be putting in that field in the first place. The asterisk, which denotes that it's mandatory. And then also one that has like a little pop out as well. And those, again, are in module 4. And there's another question that asks, could you explain what the process is like if you're doing copy cataloging in Synopia?
Greta, are you ready for that, or that's an interesting?
I think that's a piece that needs to be decided. or at least a piece that needs some best practices. I mean, you can go individually copy all those fields that you want to copy. However, if you're, how is that designated? Well, okay. In MARC now, it's still noted in the 040 who created the record and who input the record and who all made alterations to it on the way. If you're importing this into Synopia, how is that working? I personally haven't heard how we designate, or if we designate that this is an LC, this was an LC CIP record, and I finished it off. I don't know how that piece works yet. As for actually importing the MARC and having it turn into Synopia, I think that's a piece that's being developed. Somebody hopefully can tell me more about that.
And there are a couple of comments about, so possibly our next discussion could be around best practices, which Greta, you very helpfully pointed out a number of instances where we do not have best practices developed for Synopia, data entry in Synopia. So that might be worth having for whenever we decide to have our next meeting.
Yeah, and I will, Brandy just asked about saying that I know that the past results for controlled vocabularies were random and wonder if that's been looked at, and if there's possibility to add a filtering system that's more complex than just vocabulary, the owner of the vocabulary. And so there is the option on some, if it looks to multiple lookups, to select or unselect which lookups you'd like to look to. I will say it has been looked at and it has been a priority of the various phases of the development of Synopia, that the lookups have improved, and you could see when Greta was going through and couldn't find the name of somebody that she very well knew had their own URI, that usually what you have to do is go out into id.lsc.gov or something like that and pull in the link yourself. But I will say that one of the purposes of this group is to provide feedback to Synopia about things that you think work well, things that you don't work well. That feedback from other groups has helped to sort of develop Synopia over time. So if you run into trouble like that, this is the group to voice those opinions, because one of the intentions of this group was to provide that sort of feedback. And I think at some point we might have a designated meeting specifically with the developers to go over some of your concerns.
One little thing that is different from the slides relating to the searches, if you've gone through the slides and noticed the search results, at some point in the past couple of months, the @en has appeared in the live search results, but the slides haven't changed yet. So I found that personally a little bit confusing when I first did that. I was like, oh, they made a change, but it's just designating the language. But it does look a little bit different if you're, if you're working through those and then you get your result and it has that on the end. It's a little startling.
And I put a link also to the Synopia help page, where there's like a bunch of links relating to like Brandy's question about, so, Mary said that like one of the goals of this group is to, channel feedback, but if you have a technical issue that's like maybe a little, that you want to just, reach out directly to the Synopia development team, there's links on that page about how to do that and how to report issues. Yeah, and there's a lot of additional questions coming in through the chat. Ingrid asks about what a Synopia record might look in an OPAC, which is interesting as well. I think there's still a lot of unknowns there, but I'm going to drop a link into the chat to, so there's a Slack group or a Slack channel, or sorry, my Slack nomenclature is not that great. There's a Slack channel within the LD4 Slack group for discovery that's, I think, kind of looking into that. So I'm going to paste that link in now. And I think that would be a good place to sort of look for what people are doing in terms of, or looking into in terms of discovery and display. Would you agree, Mary and Greta?
Yes, it's like the $1 million question. Like, what does it look like? That's part of the goal with Synopia and with the iterations of the grant is to work towards discovery. And so all of those descriptions that you save to that PCC folder are going into a sandbox that would sort of help to populate a potential front end. And then the next question was about searching for titles beforehand to avoid duplication. And yes, that would be a good idea to do. But one of the things, especially with various instances, if your edition is a different edition or there's extra information that is unique to your book in hand, that would cause you, to want to create your own instance and item. And I know that there is also a little bit of, one of the things we can do if we really want to get down to like the nitty gritty in one of the first meetings too, is to really discuss the difference between work instance and item and some of the, where various information goes. There's a lot of documentation related to that that's available, but I understand that it is sort of this very theoretical concept, and it's very easy to get bogged down in where things belong.
And also if you've got, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Greta.
No, and also if somebody has a related work in there, at what point are you going to create, are we doing expression records, or is it a different work? Or there's a lot of, we still need to decide like where there are dividing lines between that and what our practices are going to be there, because it does have you notice that it had related work, but it also had expression of, as well as, has instance. So there's space for expression in there.
Yeah, and I guess I should also note too, like, if you're worried about if one of the motivations for that question was like, if you're worried about like, things being authenticated, it's good to keep in mind that like this is all still kind of a sandbox. And I believe like you can still, like, if you're not feeling like, in terms of duplicating titles, like if you're worried about that type of thing happening and kind of making a messy data set, yeah, we're still, it's still a sort of a test data set. So don't like let those types of concerns get in your way from experimenting necessarily. And I believe like you don't necessarily have to save everything to the PCC data pool. Like, so if you wanted to save it, I think there's actually an other bucket which is a safe space, I think, if you just want to really like explore and not worry about everything being PCC level. Okay, I guess there's a lot of questions, so but we only have till what, 4:30 Eastern, so maybe folks could we can continue answering questions maybe, and people can concurrently work on some of those examples while we're working on questions, or should we save it all, like do a quiet time and save it for the end?
I don't know if people need silence to do their
Synopia
data entry.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And I guess to my last comment too, I actually, in preparation for this session, one of the examples I provided, I actually did a record, or not a record, but a description for. So if you see that floating around in there, feel free to, for 4 Lost Cities, feel free to edit it or to do something else with it. I think I did not save it to the PCC data pool, but if I did on accident, it's free to, use another example or use your, go in and make changes to that. So it looks like, I guess, what's our next question? Is that there any, so Amanda asked if there's any mechanism in Synopia that allows for description of encoding levels. And I suppose, I know that for some elements, like there's links out, for example, to RDA text, or for most of them at this point, but I'm not sure. That would be sort of an OCLC bib formats and standards, or a MARC. That would either be in the MARC documentation or in the, right, or where even does that encoding level information live? I always, in the MARC environment, I looked at OCLC's documentation, but since BibFrame's different, it might be kind of, it might not be best, since there isn't really a standard level for encoding in BibFrame, or it has yet to be determined, right? Should we?
in the administrative metadata, you could designate things like full and pre-publication and full not examined and things like that, although it's not exactly defined what is really applicable.
Right, the standards have yet to emerge, right, for what a full bib frame description looks like. Or do we have yeah, I don't know if it's documented yet.
One of the things that we used at the Frick when we were implementing our work with Synopia was having profiles reviewed by somebody who at our library had the most experience. And I think that one of the things too that encoding could be used for is to have somebody else enter your encoding level. I don't know if that's something that people necessarily want to do, and it depends on who's using Synopia at your library and so on, but it can help to dictate what would be a good idea. But I will say that I added it to our notes for something for best practices to consider moving forward. That list continues to grow.
And Ivan has an interesting question about what if your language of cataloging is Spanish, and are there any links available besides Library of Congress? I presume that's for like Library of Congress record sets that are, or descriptions that are with a language of cataloging other than English. So I don't know, do either of you two, I know that there's a non-Roman script affinity group that is doing some work. I will see if I can go grab that Slack channel or wiki page if they've got one, and drop it into the chat here. Mary or Greta, do you know of any non-English cataloging that's happening in Synopia?
Yes, indeed. Magda, I see you're on this call. Do you want to jump in here and maybe mention in the chat what's happening? Prema, I think it's a Prema too. But yes, there are definitely people who are working in non-Roman scripts.
And I think since it's an RDA environment, or not RDA, RDF, you know.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, sorry, Magda's here, yes.
Yes, I'm here. So I'm sorry if I missed the part that you were talking about. So you have a question for me, right?
Yeah, about
Yes.
the non-Roman scripts.
Yes, I will. You know what? It was my question for you in the chat box to ask you. Can't we see one of non-Latin script tutorials? Because I wanted to see how it works. But anyway, we have many challenges for non-Latin script materials. And I also was a part in the Affinity Group for non-Latin scripts. But it is still experiments. And as the Greta showed us, we have the same issues, but maybe more because we have to add, you know, the diacritics, and also for the Arabic script, we wanted to be sure that all the Unicode will be good. But for the diacritics, for the Romanized or translated fields, it is still not easy to get it because we have to choose it from a table, not with short keys. So I think we still need to make more experiments, but I was really also today, because Greta has showed us, we need to create 4 different or use the 4 different templates to finish one work. So I don't know if it will be easy for the non-Latin. But if you have a particular question or a specific question about the non-Latin script itself, it will be great to share it with me.
Yeah, I think the original question was about searching, or was it vocabulary?
Yeah. For searching, you mean searching the authority file via Synopia? To search for the NARS or what?
I think Ivan was looking to see if he could search for descriptions that were in Spanish like where the language of cataloging was Spanish rather than English via the search interface. And I don't know if that's possible, right?
Because we haven't really been searching too much in the way of, or at least at our institution, we haven't really been like pulling in descriptions from elsewhere. One challenge we did find with diacritics in searching, though, is that I mentioned that it's hard. The searching is hard to get the heading that you want to come to the top of the list, and you should search it in the form that you in the authorized form. But if you had diacritics for a long time, we couldn't actually put diacritics in the search, so it was like impossible to get your heading up. But you can do diacritics in the search now.
And does anyone know, actually, I believe that UTF-8, like, so, kind of like if you're using standard like web, like if you're cutting and pasting from a standard like web source or something like id.loc.gov, that will search correctly, I believe, as well, without having to manually enter in the diacritics.
Forgotten, but I think it does.
You don't need to search with diacritics in the one for LC website. You can just search it without diacritics, and it will show the list of headings, and you can choose.
Okay, we'll do that within Synopia, because I had a lot of trouble searching like Estonian names. I have critics everywhere. But things keep changing too behind the scenes. So sometimes something was a problem a couple months ago, and it's not a problem now. So.
It was noted in the chat that the non-Latin Affinity Group is meeting tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. I will try to find their page to put in there as well if anybody is especially. Oh, nope, it's just been added. So that link is to the sketch for LD4, and the meeting is a part of this, which is great. And then it's also something I've put in our notes that we can consider if there's particular interest to devote maybe one of the meetings to non-Latin. We've also talked about the possibility of having sort of guest presenters for some of the sessions if things are particularly interesting. Like one of the things we haven't really discussed much, but there's, in addition to the PCC profile for monographs, there's also one for serials. Serials can sometimes be a little bit of a doozy. So if we need to devote specific time to serials too, these are all possibilities.
Yeah, and we should probably have, maybe we should have prefaced both Greta's walkthrough and the examples that we provided with, we were trying to provide examples that were as simple as possible, not because folks are not brilliant here, but just since this is the first meeting, we didn't want to get too deep into the weeds of like what to do if you've got like an electronic reproduction of a print thing, or all these kind of like more complex things that we would like to dive into later. There's still quite a lot of questions in the chat that we could get to. So Amanda asks, when URIs don't exist has always baffled me. What are you doing for those instances, i.e. if the URI doesn't exist at all? So I guess there could probably be a number of different approaches to that, as we saw in Greta's walkthrough with the headings for the ORWIG authors. Since the lookout wasn't working, you entered them as a literal, I believe. But if you do have a URI, you also can enter the URI in, is my understanding. And I'm not sure if that gets cleaned up through some sort of automated process, or if it just stays as a URI. But do you happen to know, Greta, actually? Like,
I don't know offhand if that's the case, whether it self-corrects when it finally connects up. I'm not sure. Also, remember that if you know the path of those LOC URIs, if you are creating a NAR in OCLC, you can go ahead and create your NAR, and that NAR number will become the last piece of the URI when it finally is, when LOC finally puts it up online in the idea.loc.gov. that will be the URI when it appears. So you can actually know what the URI is going to be. You can actually plug it in your record then whether it connects up or not later, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that would be an interesting question to actually, I guess, to ask the Jeremy or the technical team, like if they do like some sort of like batch job to pull in the, I think that in the RDF, it's like the value, the RDF at value, if they grab that from the name authority file at a later date for things that do not have that, but do have a URI.
Good question.
Yeah.
And that does sort of skip way ahead to answer the most recent question about, is it possible to create authority records in Synopia, which sadly is a no-go.
But it's an interesting, that could be another good idea for like a future session, like the intersection of like traditional authority work with, you know, the Synopia initiative, I guess, and like what we can and can't do, what we would like to do or to be able to do in Synopia. It could be a very interesting discussion.
I've done quite a bit of playing around with works, both contained works. I'm trying to get really advanced here. The contained works and serials, where you sometimes have a it's not in Synopia yet, but there's an authority record for it. Well, can you link to authority record? Well, yeah, you can put the, you know, ie.loc.gov there, but then it's not going to function the same as it would if it was actually a Synopia record. But I've played around with linking to all sorts of things. There's LC Works on that page also. I've tried linking to those. And so I've played around with linking to a lot of things, but how things actually function is, you know, a different matter, since we haven't, you know, we're still converting things back and forth. And then you can convert these to MARC too, which is an interesting experiment. You know, did you see the MARC conversion button on the instance? Play with that too.
Nancy Falgren had a question about like whether mesh and NLM classification are available in that template. I believe they are, but
Remember offhand.
Yeah, so we could check to confirm.
They are. I saw them in there as one of the first. It's actually in the classification. It's like the first one at the top of the list.
Okay,
so
great.
Yep, it's there.
Like, why?
And then it looks like Ingrid has a question about share VDE in Synopia, and specifically the share VDE concept of the super work. Does Synopia accommodate that? So that is not something I definitely do not know myself. Does anyone in this group or any participants have any idea about that?
Yeah.
I don't, and I'm looking now because I think Share VDE is, I know that there's somebody from Share VDE who was on this call. I don't know if they're still here. Okay. I saw it in the chat, and they are welcome to chime in if they can add any insight. That would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think that's you know, that's a kind of an ontological issue, right? Where we have all these different related ontologies that don't necessarily mesh up together. So like RDA is a little different than BibFrame, and so on and so forth, and it creates some interesting complications. And I think BibFrame is still, well, there's the newer RDA too, which is quite a bit different. And I don't know, yeah, at any rate, I'm going to stop now. Let's see. So Ivan asked about Dewey Decimal classification. That is in the templates. And Ingrid asked, is there a timetable to make Synopia available to the broader LIS community? So that's an interesting question. Currently, I believe anyone can get a Synopia account and go in and start, you know, kind of playing around in the sandbox, the stage Synopia. I believe that this question was kind of came up in one of the sessions that I attended earlier today, and I believe that Michelle Fitornik kind of addressed it. So I'm not gonna I'm just gonna recap my probably imperfect recollection of what she said, which is that production hasn't really been used. So there's 3 instances of Synopia. There's a development, there's stage, which is what we're using for this group, which is kind of a sandbox, and then there's production. And so production hasn't really been fully rolled out, but I think that like it will in the next cycle of the LD4 projects, and it's going to have authentication, meaning like stricter login and permissions and things like that. But if anyone from the Synopia project knows more about that, feel free to chime in chat or just unmute yourself. Lots of great comments.
Ingrid had a question about PCC working with vendors to make Synopia records more available. And as far as I know, that's not being discussed, but Melanie did add somewhere in the chat that the PCC is hosting a BibFrame data exchange meeting in September, and that many of these questions will be discussed. I do know that increasingly, as many of you may know, library systems are using or saying that they can accommodate BibFrame. So that's sort of a possibility, and that is made easier by the development of the MARC to BibFrame, BibFrame to MARC conversion. But like we said before, in terms of a front end or discovery layer, like that's currently still in development.
Right, and I guess to note, this is somewhat, maybe a little different than what Ingrid's talking about, but ShareVDE itself is kind of a vendor driven, although I don't think that the PCC has been so directly, kind of interfacing. I mean, there's definitely been dialogues and conversations between the PCC and ShareVDE, but I'm not sure how formal that relationship is. And it's definitely not like an ILS vendor type of a relationship. Beth has a hand up. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm currently the chair of the ShareVDE Advisory Council. So if I could comment a little bit on the project, the ShareVDE is a library-driven project, even though the technological work is being done by the vendor. The development, the setting priorities is done by libraries. And we do have a regular relationship between the PCC and ShareVDE. And ShareVDE has created a PCC data pool, which all of the PCC cataloging records and authority records from OCLC have been converted to BibFrame and are available. And they do regular updates. I think they're doing monthly updates. So it's another source of data. And they're also working with the LD4 project to get the loop from that data pool back into Synopia, so that catalogers that are working in Synopia will be able to see PCC data that has been converted to BibFrame and say if you wanted to use that in the future as a new addition, a new work, a new instance, that data will be there. So there's, I think, a lot of hopeful things about the relationship between all these various projects working with BibFrame and linked data. So I think that's my take on ShareVDE and how it interfaces with all of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Beth. So that's good background info to know. There's so many moving parts of both the PCC and Synopia and LD4. So it's thank you for catching us up on those developments. In response to an earlier question about that Ingrid posed about SuperWorks and the ShareVDE model, Ian Bigelow of University of Alberta notes in the chat that U Alberta is using the Opus in their Synopia profiles. So so check that out, I guess. You can search any profiles that are available in Stage, not just the PCC profiles. And kind of try to enter data using them. So if you wanted to explore that super work or race or whatever it is concept, check out the URL Berta profile for Opus. I guess we've got about 15 more or 20 more minutes. Should we open the floor for people who are working on records? Or sorry, I shouldn't say records, on descriptions. You know, any questions you might have. Could we get maybe, could folks maybe like raise their Zoom hands to note if you're like, just so we can get an idea of how many folks have actually tried to make descriptions using the examples or their own examples while we've been having this chat. And if you go down to reactions, I think the raise hand is there, right? Or is it somewhere else?
That's where it is.
Yeah. So I see one raised hand. Maybe other folks could raise their hands or are looking for the button to raise their hand.
Yeah, there are 3 so far.
3,
They're
okay.
very
Well,
avid catalogers, descriptors, I guess. Yeah, and if those who have, you're welcome to put it in the chat, but you're also super encouraged to just pipe up if you're interested, if you can, and share some of your experience. We're super curious to know how you felt about it, if you enjoyed it, things that were complicated, where you got stuck, any thoughts would be great.
Yeah, would any of our 3 raised hands like to chime in about to volunteer? No pressure if you don't want to address the whole group.
Sorry, Ian here. Sorry, I wasn't sure about the order of operations there. I was just going to dive in to add about the context with, I guess, ShareBDE entities and Synopia. So we've, like the University of Alberta profile, we have actually used them sort of throughout in terms of having a more universal URI identifiers to put in through the QA product lookups to add those into for the work, for the Opus, etc. In terms of the status of that, though, I believe QA up to this point has used like a static export from ShareBDE on their end to populate that lookup tool. So I think one of the things with LD4 P3, someone else can dive in if they're around, but is to sort of actually connect the lookup directly to the ShareBDE system so that it's live and has any ongoing updates in it. So that's an interesting thing to come. But yeah, the difference it's like between the data model with ShareBDE with the Opus, for instance, as opposed to sort of what we see in the PCC profiles is one of those interesting things that I'm hoping to see more as there's the the PCC data exchange, BibFrame data exchange meetings coming and so forth. So see what best practices emerge and so forth. So
yeah, thanks for that update. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what new functionalities come out in Synopia as it continues to be developed. So that sounds great.
Misty had a question about using the profiles, which was, are we adding articles in titles?
Good question. I actually alluded to that during the alluded to that in the when I was speaking. I was wondering about the title, the work title label as opposed to the preferred title, and I'm not sure if we have a practice there. What I've been doing previously is putting the article in the instance record and not in the work record, but we need a best practice for that. And I was working in a template that didn't have the title label, which is why that sudden appearance has baffled me slightly. So, but it's a good question. That's a best practice that needs to be discussed.
Beth and Christine said they both do it your way.
Yeah. Ivan has like an interesting question about the internationalization of Synopia. And I would say like maybe you know, I don't think that right now it's necessarily like, you know, like there's like a formal effort to like, you know, make profiles that are like in another language, kind of like there is with, you know, like translating RDA, but that could be an interesting topic for this group to look into. And I think I should note that I believe that if you wanted to like make your own like derive your own like resource templates for BibFrame work and instance and so on, and translate them into a different language while still pointing to the BibFrame elements, you're more than welcome to do that. We didn't cover template creation, but I think that that would be an amazing thing to do to, you know, kind of increase the internationalization of Synopia. So I don't know, Greta, you've got a lot more, and Mary, you've got a lot more experience with template creation. So would you see any barriers to just like kind of making Spanish or like other language templates so that it would be like kind of a more fully non-English Synopia implementation?
Yeah, I think it would be great. I know that for the purpose of the Affinity Group as it stands right now within the charge is to work with the pre-existing templates. I also know in addition that there are currently only PCC profiles for monographs and serials, and there obviously would be interest, I assume, in creating profiles for other material types. So material types and languages and making it sort of more accessible to, yeah, I think that's super interesting. Because we're getting close to time though, I wanted to sort of address a couple of the questions about when we'll meet and how often. And I know that Ivan also asked about, is there regular training for Synopia for newbies? And that's kind of what this is, because there really hasn't been any before this. So I will encourage, and I'll put the link here, that everybody who is interested in participating in the Affinity Group join the Google group, which is where announcements will be sent from. There was, I think, while it'd be sort of hard for this group to decide when to meet, it might be a good idea to send a survey where we can put some of the future topics in and let people do some ranked choice for some future topics. And also to see if there's people who would prefer to meet monthly, or, you know, if which day of the week works best for them, something like that. Something very brief so that we're not bogged down in tons of emails going back and forth, but I think that might be the best way moving forward, because there are 60 of us in this call, which is fantastic. It's definitely more than I thought, and I'm really excited about it, but it'd be sort of like herding cats to get everyone to decide that like Wednesdays at 2 p.m. work for them. And I do think that, as Ivan said about the training, that it would actually might be, if people find it helpful, that we can begin the Affinity Group sessions with review of the training modules. Although I think the training modules don't get into what Greta just covered, which is sort of the nitty gritty of actually putting information into the profiles. And I think that's where people tend to have the most questions, because there are such an increasingly large number of variables in terms of what can be put in. So like I said, if you join the Google group, it's also linked in our PCC, the wiki space, and it's linked on the meeting notes. So however you find it and however you come to it, the Google group, if you could just join, and that would be a good way for us to get everyone's information so we can send out future information.
Ian, I see you have your hand raised. Is that just from before, or is it a new hand raise?
Sorry, that was just from before.
Ingrid has another question in the chat about, do we know how the new RDA will impact the current version of Synopia? And are there plans in Synopia to accommodate changes in the new RDA? And it's a shame Melanie Wacker, who is the PCC chair and my supervisor at Columbia, probably would have had some thoughts about that. And I welcome anyone who is might have any information about that to step up. I believe what I guess Melanie would probably say would be something like, you know, there still is no concrete date set for adoption of the new RDA by the PCC. So I would anticipate that at least for PCC activity in Synopia would be kind of similar, that there isn't really a date set for any sort of adaptation to the new RDA in Synopia. But that could be something that this group could probably like explore. We could have a discussion about like, you know, the impact of new RDA on Synopia and BibFrame, and that might be kind of an interesting thing. I presume there are some PCC groups that are looking at like BibFrame and the new RDA. But yeah, does anyone, there's so many PCC groups that I sometimes lose track. I presume yes, Beth, you've got your hand raised.
There is a PCC metadata application profile group currently working that would probably be the one to do any updates to any profiles in Synopia. And the other thought, I put this in the chat, the PCC date is no sooner than July 2022, could be later. And there is a PCC position paper on RDA adopting it as a content standard, not a metadata standard. I think that's the right wording, but I couldn't find the link quickly. So if anybody wants to share that link. So potentially you can think of BibFrame and the templates in Synopia as a framework, and the content for the new RDA would fit in those templates. It is one way of looking at it, just as Mark is a framework, which the new RDA could fit the content in. But there are different views on that, and I'm not representing the PCC in stating this.
I can mention that having been for a few years on the aggregations working group, we sort of had aggregations on the brain, and I've played around quite a bit in Synopia with trying to figure out how the new RDA instructions for aggregations would work in Synopia. So I've had some fun playing around. If anybody wants to look up Doyle in Stage, you might see a bunch of my records.
Ivan also asked if Synopia will be able to take a copy of a title page and create a record without too much human intervention. And I assume you mean something like a screenshot in terms of a copy of a title page, or one of the things we didn't talk about was like duplication of records. And Greta, I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add. I mean, adding a copy of a title page would be like Minority Report level technology for us. I think it would be super cool. But yeah, Greta, if you have more to add.
Yeah, actually, you know, we do so much transcription, which basically, you know, if we had a copy of the title page, that might actually fulfill that function. That could be attached to records. I always thought that would be an awesome thing. We can kind of do it with, you know, with the ebooks. Not exactly attached, but at least you can link to them and look.
I'm guessing though there's no plans to like kind of build that kind of artificial intelligence into Synopia at the moment, but that might be something to there's a Synopia user group I keep putting links into the Slack channel. Maybe I'll just put in a link for the general LD4 Slack page, and that could be something that might be interesting to bring up there. That also calls to mind in the new RDA, since this has come up, you know, this idea of the manifestation statement, which really isn't in, is not incorporated, as far as I know, really in a meaningful way in BibFrame. But I think that the idea of that manifestation statement was, to a certain extent, kind of what Ivan is asking, where you just have kind of like a blob of data from like a title page or another source that's all just kind of represented like as it's like a scan, or like just kind of like entered without a lot of structure, and that kind of serves that purpose of transcription and potentially could support more automated processes. Okay, well, we've got a few more minutes. I'll drop the link to the Google group. So like if you'd like announcements, and we'll follow up, I guess, with like, you know, some ideas for future sessions, and like for how we should meet, like how frequently, I guess, and like maybe like regular or like on a regular schedule or on a more ad hoc schedule. So look for that, and if you just click the link that I dropped into the chat, it's also linked on the notes document that we were sharing at the beginning of the session. You can, you know, sign up for the Google group right there, and we'll be yeah, sending out more details hopefully soon. Like in, I don't know, what do you think, Mary and Greta? Do we need a few days to let the conference kind of simmer down and confer amongst ourselves, or?
Yeah, give me a couple days to write up a survey and run it by everybody in the task group, and then we'll send something out. I would like to say by the end of the week. That would be a doable thing. And also, I wanted to remind everyone, I know many of the people in this call are new to Synopia, but if you are not and you are interested in assisting Ryan, Timothy is right up there on your Zoom, so I guess it's fine for Ryan and Greta on as a facilitator, please reach out to me or to the Google group. My contact information is listed in the wiki space as well. So we are looking for somebody else. I know that Ryan and Greta are very capable, but it is a lot of sort of points of entry and stuff to keep an eye on. And yeah, it would be super helpful. So if you can think of anybody you work with, you want to recruit, or if you're in this call and you're interested, that would be really helpful. And I don't know if people have any last things that they want to add that they would like to see for some future meetings. And then I can use those to help fill out potential topics in the survey as well. We have quite a list, especially relating to best practices and training and stuff. But if there's anything else you can think of that would make it more helpful for you to navigate Synopia, let us know. We have about 2 minutes left for some last right under the wire questions, if anybody has anything. But in the meantime, I want to thank, oh, sorry, yeah, Ryan?
Did anyone who tried to do any Synopia cataloging wanna any final thoughts if you did try to make a description in Synopia? Probably, it doesn't seem like it, so all right.
But I do want to thank Greta and Ryan for all of their hard work and for helping to run this so smoothly and to provide so much information for everyone. I hope this is helpful. The chat has been super active and the number of participants is kind of staggering to me. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, and to everyone who chimed in and had questions and all of that. We really appreciate it. And hopefully we can keep this going with future meetings. Yeah, and as I said, feel free to reach out. You have so many points of contact for us with all of this. I don't know if you, Ryan or Greta, have any parting words.
Thanks, we survived.
Yeah. Missy said, I still think they're good with lots of questions, and I think that's absolutely true. And hopefully we can help to answer those in future meetings. But yeah, look out for some information from us coming soon.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for coming. This has been great, and looking forward to this group, and hopefully you know, having some more interesting discussions in the future.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Will, am I able to save the chat? Is that okay?
Yeah, if you download it.
I saved it also, but it doesn't hurt to have additional.
Sure.
Yeah.
How does one do that, actually?
You click the 3 dots by the chat thing and then click Save Chat. And then I think it just downloads to your desktop if you've got like Zoom desktop. So when you close the meeting, it'll kind of pop up a window with like meeting save chat.txt.
Oh, okay. Just seem to have close and pop out.
All right, so I guess the 3 of us will be in touch over this week about some next steps. But
Yeah, I'll draft a survey tomorrow morning while you guys are still asleep. And,
Late for you.
Yeah.
that's okay. I know everyone got to watch it get dark. But I'll draft a survey and we can sort that all out. Is there anything else you need from us, Will?
No, great job.
Cool.
You took all my moderating ideas. You were so attentive. Thank you for that. That was so easy.
Yeah, 3 people makes it easy to keep track of everything that's going on.
So easy.
Yeah, cool. You just get to sit and watch it go by. Cool. All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Thanks, Will. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
See you at future sessions.